excited when I saw Turtle's conversation. Like lots of people in Grahamstown, the evenings that came up and went just weren't possible. And then I had mentioned to Joanne that I was interested in speaking, and she said, well, we need somebody today. So it's a really great pleasure to be with you. Now, I'm not sure, let's get into it before we think about what the title is about. This afternoon, at 4 o'clock, I had just finished a 2-hour session. I'm participating in the research of a doctoral student in dance movement psychotherapy. And the idea of her research is that movement can embody literally healing, that it can be a transformative pathway to healing in a society where the verbal, and certainly the intellectual verbal, is very strong and sometimes very overwhelming. And in a South African context, water is very often a traumatic experience, environment, context. And so she went off to Edinburgh and was trained in dance movement psychotherapy and used that training as the first chapter of her doctoral work to observe the training from the perspective of her anticipated research. So she used that training period and kept a journal and watched herself in the training with the idea of this applied research. And I'm a scientist by training. I got trained at UKZN at Rhodes in the zoology department here, so impeccable scientific credentials from the Rhodes point of view. And got caught up in the driving passions of fairness and sustainability, of wanting to live in a world that both had some kind of a future on a connected planet and something that would transcend the enormity of injustice that we lived in. And so I'm going to take you for a minute into Athena's dance movement session this afternoon. And she said, the common experience we all have here this afternoon is that we breathe. So let's all stand up. And if you put your hand on your tummy, you can sometimes tell the difference between the air that goes into your lungs and the air that goes down in your tummy. So if you do a breathe into your lungs, and then you drop your diaphragm so your tummy fills up, you get the idea of a deep breath, and then you let it out of your tummy, and you let it out of your lungs, and then you breathe it in again. So have a go at this deep breathing. When you go, and you feel it filling all the way up to here. And then you fill up your lungs, and then you it out again. And then the other thing that Athena always does for us in any meeting where she encourages us to move into a movement space is to make some sort of a extravagant movement and sound. So I'm going to invite you, it's an invitation, it's not a coercion. I'm going to invite you to make a movement and a sound all at the same time, all in a jumble, all a bit noisy, and I'm going to go, ooh! Okay, 1, 2, 3, and you do your own one. 1, 2, 3. Oh! Okay, there we go. So now we have established a commonality of experience. We've established that we breathe. Sorry. Sorry. We established that we breathe, and we established that we all inhabit a body. The other thing that we do is we live relationally. We live in relationship to each other in some way or another, or to other people, or to other living things, or to inanimate objects. We live relationally. And from my perspective, and this is where my particular disciplinary training shows a bit of a slant, I see us all as living on this particular planet in what I call a catchment, which is that bit of the ground on which rain falls and travels downhill. So that's undoubtedly true, but it's not relevant to everybody. But it's quite relevant to me. But breathing is very relevant to everybody. So there are commonalities of humanity, and you could extend this list extensively in each of your own understandings. Now, if we think of transformation, which is one of those really loaded words, particularly in South Africa today, we think of change towards something new. Transformation, change towards some new condition. Why should this be such an enormous term for us? Why is it a heavy word, as it were? It carries weight when you say transformation. You don't go skipping down the path. You say, ah, right, transformation. So at Rhodes, in this place, in South Africa, within Africa, let's just keep ourselves in a continental framing. What are we looking for? I don't know what you're looking for. I don't even know if you're looking for something. But for me, both personally and professionally, I'm tremendously interested in change towards some sort of emancipation or freedom of thinking, of practice, of thought, of being, justice, fairness, and sustainability. Some sense of the possibility of a future, of some sort of a future. I'd like that to encompass my entirely delightful grandchildren. So what's the problem? Well, we are beset with intractable or difficult problems. It may be the endless, or it may be financial problems, it may be in-law problems, it may be love problems, it may be the problems of poverty and inequity, it may be drugs, it may be soil erosion, it may be any number of things that mean we live less well than we hope to. And as we seek to escape those problems, because we all seek to escape our problems, we come across limitations. We try various things. There was a small mouse in our dog food last night. Very upset when I poured it from the container into the and its first escape was jumping up and down, and anyway, it had various escape instincts. The limitations that we try power and privilege. We try the strong person, old family, historic reasons. We try the trappings of power, and we have extended privilege. We try that for solving problems. We try extremely excellent knowledge to solve our problems. We try silos. Well, we'll be very good at this, and we most of all, we try efficiency. Let's do it really well. And each of these works to a limited extent. We can see it working. There are people who exercise power and privilege and all the rest of it. But we very seldom find each or any of these effecting change away from the problematic state towards an agreed well-being, towards a broad group of people saying, okay, this is better, this is okay, we can live with this. So why? Why is it so difficult to deal with these intractable problems? Why are municipalities failing in South Africa? Why is it so hard? Why, 20 years after democracy, can we still have places that I work in are called the land of happy orange trees and unhappy people, where you can have export orange crops, and next door you can have people without water in the houses at all? Why? Well, now, this is where I jump from what everybody could identify with to a particular view that I've come to over time that I don't expect you to share, but is just an insight into the way my thinking has traveled. Over time, I was exposed to this idea of complex systems, that most phenomena in life, from cells to our body, to our families, to our universities, to whatever, show characteristics of complex systems. And I was interested in reading about these characteristics because they seemed to be characteristics that would help me understand why some problems were so intractable, so difficult to shift. Well, most or complex systems, as they're understood, have many, many elements. Many parts, many congregations, many views, many differences, high level of diversity of parts. And those parts have relationships. They're connected to each other by processes and relationships. And those processes and relationships have a broad range of characteristics. But many of them are not linear. Many of the shape of the relationship is not linear. There are feedbacks. As one thing happens, it triggers off something else. They work differently at different scales. What works at one scale doesn't work at another scale. And time frames are really important because there are lags and accelerations and all sorts of processes that are very difficult to predict. The consequences of some of these characteristics are that when you intervene in such a system, when you do something, you can think and think and think and plan and get a whole lot of money and intervene, and only a little bit of change happens and you're disappointed. Or you can just do one small thing and it has an unexpectedly huge response. And these are the surprises and disappointments that we have as a consequence of any kind of a complex system, whether it's our family or the way our bank behaves. And because of all of this, context is all. The way these elements and their relationships behave are profoundly dependent on the context, on where and how and what's going on. And because that context is so important, context is entirely driven by history. So you must know where it's come from in order to have any understanding of the context. And that means, and my favorite bit of the slide can't be seen right now.
Put it on a bit
So I
further.
might have to draw it. Oh, will it? No, I'll probably get it shooting up. Do you mind if I draw? So we are taught in project planning that we need to go from A to B, we need to know what B is, and we need to be able to plan and project plan that efficiently. Whereas all of us know in our bones, if we only think of what happened to us today in getting to this venue, that you know you want to go to B, that your progress is circuitous and sometimes backwards, and that you end at B star, which may be something like B. So we are in seminar room 3. The numbering is a bit peculiar, but we're here. And it's a huge relief in our intellectual lives, and in our supervision, and in our teaching, and our academic lives, to accept that because we ourselves and our students and the intractable, difficult questions we engage with are the way they are, that our intellectual journey is likely to look like this. And it's helpful for our students to know that, because when they're going backwards, they get really frightened. And it's comforting to know that everybody goes backwards. But that if you have B in mind, and if you have some tools of the trade, and we'll talk about those, and some sort of vision and some sort of conceptual framing and some sort of way of going, you are likely to progress towards the place you would like to go. So I find this a helpful ontology. I'm so proud as a scientist to use that. I have only understood it for a very short while, but I do know the complex systems of my ontology. So, what are we trying to talk about? We're trying to say that actually what's missing from here is to tell you what I think transdisciplinarity is. In my reading of the literature and in my practice in transdisciplinary, I understand transdisciplinarity as different from multi and interdisciplinarity. And the differences are, that the goal of transdisciplinarity is to build concurrent knowledge. So very often in multi and interdisciplinary systems, you have many different kinds of knowledge being accumulated about a problem. And then you do all the work and then you knit it together at the end, if you can. And hopefully you hand it over to a consultant who knits it over. But transdisciplinarity says there needs to be an interconnectivity of learning and knowledge through the process. And not only that, but the process of going towards your being, what the intractable, and it's designed to address intractable problems. You don't use transdisciplinarity to investigate gravity. You know, it's not a good tool for that. It's not a necessary tool. But if you want to find out why municipalities don't work or why an institution doesn't change easily, then it's a quite useful way of doing things. So it's this concurrent learning and learning by doing, acting, learning from the consequences, having short learning cycles of acting and change. So those are the elements. Many kinds of knowledge. So there's this key characteristic of respect for difference and diversity. Many ways of knowing. Respect many ways of knowing and many different kinds of ways of knowing. So in the university where we teach, research and engage, I would have loved to have, but I don't actually do a lot of teaching. I teach an honours course. But I'm very, very involved in research and supervision, and I undertake that research as engaged research. So I know more about that than about curriculum development from a teaching perspective. So all of our research, we find that problems come to us. Maybe it's because we work in water. But we're not short of problems, spaces. We engage in action research, which means we learn by doing. We critically engage contextually, finding and respecting local knowledge so that we partner people in co-learning about the problem that we are facilitating progress. We don't talk about finding solutions. There aren't solutions as such. There's movement towards a space. Is that 5 minutes? And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to support this kind of engagement in difficult spaces, drawing in many kinds of knowledge, which include different disciplinary knowledges, towards moving in a direction that you would like to move in. This is Max Neef's picture, which just gives you some ideas of a transdisciplinary system. He suggests that there are a range of tools for finding out what is. There's a box below here that says the empirical, the what is, to describe the way the world is. And then there's a group of knowledge that says, well, what do we do with it? And out of all the doing that we can do, how can we choose what to do? And out of what we could choose to do, what should we choose to do because of our value systems? And so he gives us a kind of organizational platform for the kinds of knowledges we might see. I found him quite helpful. I found critical realism quite helpful because in a world that calls for evidence-based decision-making, we fall too easily into the trap that only science produces evidence. And critical realism says there's a whole range of ways the world is, and ways of investigating. So, for example, you've got things that can be measured in the traditional scientific manner. They say there's an empirical database. There's stuff that you get that we know about, but that is not easy to measure directly. Moods is a really easy one to do. I can see whether you're happy, sad, miserable, but I don't have a sadometer. And then there are things that are somewhat mysterious, that people have convictions about. God, humanity, right. And so the degree to which you can explain the phenomenon very, very accurately is different in these domains. And so it's helpful to know then which tools you use, which methodologies, which kinds of ways of investigating you use in those things, because very often you need all three to address an intractable problem. It is no use telling somebody that that slope is going to is going to lose sediment at this rate, and therefore we have to build this, or if we're going to build this dam and the slope is going to sediment, and giving them all the knowledge, if what really matters to them is their granddad's grave is in the dam site. The other thing is that's really helpful, and there's a nice paper on this, is it's really easy to get overwhelmed by the muchness of this. And so quite often it's helpful to say, when you want something to be useful, how much detail do you need? Because you build detail up to a point, and then it's really easy, especially if you're an academic, to go shooting up the complicated road and get more and more detail, which is less useful for what you're trying to do. Or if you're a manager that says, excuse me, get out of your ivory tower, I just want one number, which gets you into the oversimplification route. So it's quite often useful to explain to somebody, you need to be as detailed as you need to be and no more, and that's a discernment, that's an art. There's no requisite simplicity fairy that taps you on the shoulder and says, you got there, well done. Sometimes, this is a picture of requisite simplicity. In our policies, and in this case, one of our students that I co-supervised with Prof. Christobet is looking at local government, and we have this really, really excellent set of legislation, but our practice is a little bit bent, and that maybe what we needed was something a little bit more robust. Eisen is very helpful when it comes to taking students through this, because he says, if you've got your little bit of the intractable problem, why don't you think about understanding situation one from a historical point of view, using your methodologies to track any changes in practice and in understanding. So you are now working together with a team, with people on the ground, track the change in understanding and practice, because this movement is transformation. But you ask critical questions, you ask critical things about direction. In all of our work, we've come up with some helpful things when you're trying to do this kind of thing, and I haven't got time to go through them. But managing discontinuities is a critical one, because there are always new people. Things always change. People come and go. There's always discontinuities, and some of those you might recognize. This is a bit busy, and I'm going to leave it, actually. I should have stuck with a simple one, but basically, it was this idea that we need to engage with relationship. Know that there's a really complex reality and incomplete insight, and therefore, no matter how clever you are and what you know, you don't know everything. And therefore, humility is a really good thing to have. And that you need a wide range of spaces to work in.